All right, so today I want to talk about something that is probably something you've heard me talk about before in some of the live calls or in some of the previous stuff you've done with me, but this is so important that I want to repeat it again. Again, it's not about knowing and just hearing, it's about actually implementing. So the most important question that you can ever answer when it comes to business, like Peter Drucker says, right? You know, managing oneself. If you haven't read that book, by the way, make sure you go back and reread it as part of what you're doing now with me in this advanced business section. So most people most people think they know what they're good at. Most people are wrong. Even more people think they know what they're weak at. Even then, more people are wrong than right. That's a direct quote from Peter Drucker. So the question, before we go too far into you learning the stuff like marketing and price testing and split testing and SEO, website optimization, everything that people think that you need in the modern world to become an investor entrepreneur, we have to step back and ask ourselves a couple questions. You may have done this before, but I want you to do it again and again and again. And I think it's something you'll do for the rest of your business career. Hopefully you'll have more clarity and insight each time and you're not starting completely from scratch. But before we get, so I was saying the most common question I get is, what should I be doing? Am I doing the right career? Am I having the right product? Just a quick recap here. So the first thing, kind of, if you think of it like a pyramid, you have know yourself. Okay, and this goes back to, Socrates, Plato, the Oracle of Delphi. Know yourself. That's the starting point if we had to give a 1. Now, when I say a starting point, what I mean is you may have jumped ahead a notch down here trying to figure out what product you're selling right now to make you a lot of money. But it doesn't work very well on a consistent mathematical probability basis if you go out of order. So number 1, then number 2, and now how do you know yourself? I'll get to that in a second. Number 2, it's know your industry. Now, if you go on the Department of Labor, if you go on their website, they list out about 15, 20 industries that you can focus on. After that, and we'll come back to this in a second, number 3, know your product. And you're going to notice this, and this is why it's, you should be excited that you're going through this program, not because it's me that you're learning from, but this is stuff from people way smarter than me, okay? But I was lucky enough to learn this, and to the extent that I've been successful, it's because I've tried to follow this. And whenever I have not followed this in business, I have either failed or made a lot of money in something that I didn't really want to do. I think Seneca, the philosopher, said, the worst thing in life is to wish for something and then at the end of your life get it or finally achieve it and realize you didn't really want it. He talks about that in The Shortness of Life. So there's been times when I've done that. I've got a business partner, friend, he makes about $1 million a month, almost $1.5 million net, not gross, net a month that he pays himself personally. And he said, he was telling me, Ty, I wake up angry every morning. So he got what everybody thinks that you want, right? He got it because he focused on the product first, but the industry he hates because it doesn't match up with him. So you start down here, you'll end up making $1 million. And here's the worst thing about making $1 million doing the wrong thing. If you make $1 million doing the wrong thing, you will probably never stop doing it, because who's going to give up $1 million a month? So you're basically stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's almost like you're in a cage of income. And that, Alan Nation told me, Ty, be careful making too much money in your 20s because you'll get trapped. So better than that mentality of starting with the product. So most of your friends, they're going to be like, hey, I was just, I was reading the Wall Street Journal, or I saw this app in the news that they sold for millions of dollars. I'm going to make an app like that. That's starting from the product. That's a horrible way to start. And for you in this program, by the time you graduate, I want you to have gone through these 3 over these next 18 months that you're in this program. That's what a true investor entrepreneur. And like I said, I want to try to back this up, not just have theories. If you look at somebody like Warren Buffett, right, richest man in the world, he says it kind of as a joke. He said, if I had been born 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, I would have gotten eaten by a lion because I don't have good eyesight, I can't run fast, I'm kind of fat. But he said, in the times we live in now, I'm good at math, I'm good at understanding investments, allocating capital, and so I've become the richest man in the world. Same with Bill Gates, said the same thing. He said 10,000 years ago, he knows himself. He's not a very physically coordinated guy, but he is really smart, and he's good at software. So both of those guys, they knew themselves at the beginning. They knew what they were strong at and weak at, and they then proceeded from there into the correct industry. If you know you're good at math, pick the industry that rewards people good at math. If you are horrible at math, how often do you meet people that their parents or for some reason they were pursuing money and they ended up doing math, and then even if you get it, you hate it? By the way, what comes after know this? This, that everybody wants, money. Money comes there. Everybody really starts there, then they think it's a product, then maybe they think about, then most people forget about these too. So let's go through these real fast, and this will be a continuing theme. So this is kind of here at the beginning, getting you warmed up. Go back into this. You should have this investor entrepreneur journal that you're building in this kind of mini MBA program that we're doing. So be writing these things down, and over the next 18 months, or ever how long you choose to stay in this, you will see an evolution in your thought that gets more clarity over time. So how do you know yourself? I'm going to give you some practical stuff here. The simplest and one of the smartest ones that's so simple people don't believe it's true. Go to do different personality tests. So for example, I am a ENTP in the Myers-Briggs system. There's different systems that you can follow. I like the Myers-Briggs one. I'm like a 40% this. I forget what I am in all the percentages, but I do know what it means. It means that an ENTP is considered like a visionary. They can be a CEO, but they're really good at coming up with ideas, and they're kind of head of the pack in terms of idea base. So where have I done well in business? It's when I've been a visionary type person. Where have I done not so well? It's when I've been a person that focused on trying to, be like, take the business to completion. I'm not as good at that. I'm better off partnering with people that are practical people that like to do the rest of the stuff. So that's a simple test. You can go online. Human Metrics has one. I think they still have one. And then when you take the test, click the little button that says career types. It's free. It's a tragedy of our times that you and I went through school and nobody forced us. If I had a university, or if I could take over the university system in the world, I'd have a rule. You have to prove it. You have to prove that you're in the right place before we allow you in the school. Now, universities are about, you have to prove how smart you are, which is great, and I understand Harvard wants to see your SAT test, but that's still not as good. That's going to create a world with a whole bunch of smart, unhappy people who are doing what their parents want or who are doing what they think is the next big thing instead of knowing yourself. So one of the ways, you have to know your personality. Peter Drucker says you have to know how you learn. Some people learn from classroom settings and some people don't. There's no right or wrong. If you're in the 67 steps, we talk about the black and white mind. Some people are black, or white. It's like extremes. You have to go to college to make money. That's not true. That's not a law of physics. I can disprove that mathematically instantly. I can also disprove mathematically that college is never helpful. I can disprove both of those. I would say college is relatively uncorrelated with success. It's not causative. It's correlated, but not causative. What's causative of success is knowing yourself. People who start, this is a mathematical fact, people who start the youngest doing whatever they're going to do are the most likely to be successful. I read once that's the only correlated thing with, only causative factor in success. So if you start at 5 years old, a restaurant in the restaurant business, by the time you're 30, you have 25 years in. If you stick to the same thing, I bet you you're pretty good at it. And I bet you you're better than even a smart person who didn't figure it out to 25. Time in matters. It really does. It's like a forest, you know. Joel Salatin used to say, who was a forester on a farm, and he said, Todd, the good thing about being a forester is you learn the real timeline for success. If you want to have a successful tree stand that you harvest for wood, you have to plant 25 years ahead of time. Trees, good trees like oak trees, the hardwood trees that are really valuable, mahogany, some of these things take 50 years to grow. The trees that grow really fast are the invaluable ones, pine and things like this, willow, whatever, spruce, all this kind of trees that are quick up and easy to cut down, a lot less valuable. So if you value yourself, you want to at least start with personality. You want to know how you learn. I know now that I learn by like talking about stuff. I don't learn by notes. I went through school, everyone telling me I should take notes. Why? I shouldn't have never taken any notes. Notes were stupid for me. I'm serious. It makes me almost angry to know there's tens of millions of people just wasting their time taking notes. I don't remember anything from notes. Everything, you know, people ask me, Ty, when you get on camera and talk for an hour, do you have notes? I'm like, no, because notes never help me. So why am I going to start now? I was reading a book by Chuck Daly. He was the NBA champion coach, basketball coach for the Detroit Pistons. And he was talking about this same principle of basically, he was saying he plays his basketball for his teams the same way in the regular season as the playoffs. Because he goes, why would I do something during the regular season and then change in the playoffs? I want them always doing the same way. So it's like me. Why would I start talking to you right now from notes if I know during the regular time, notes don't help me? They don't help me now. They don't help me anytime. The only time I ever use notes is to remember if I want to quote the name of the scientist or the page it's on. Then I'll write it down. But know yourself. But you might be somebody who needs notes. If you don't know how you learn, you're done in business. You might as well quit this course right now. Because in a world of, I read an interesting book called, I think it's called Riveted. And it basically said the pace of learning, the amount of information, let's say a doctor has to absorb medically, every 9 months, it's something like doubles. So in 1 or 2 years, everything that people have learned is almost obsolete now. If you're an engineer, scientist, business person. So if you don't know how to learn and how you learn, what modality, just quit right now and go back until you can come to a place. You have to know what you value, and I don't mean values like everybody else. Like, you have to honestly be like, I'm a materialistic person. There's nothing wrong with being a materialistic person. There is something wrong with being materialistic to an extreme where you forget about, you just try to make money, but then you're super fat because you never exercise. That would be pretty stupid. But in terms of, knowing what you value, are you materialistic? Do you value family more? Do you value power? And once you know there's no black and white answer, then who cares whatever you answer? Just answer it honestly. If you're materialistic, be like, I'm somebody. Warren Buffett said at a young age, I knew I wanted to be rich. And he said, I knew I would be rich. Who cares? You think he's made the world a worse place? No. The worst thing about the world and the business world we live in is a whole bunch of people running around like chickens with their head cut off, having no idea what they're doing. You need to know what you value. And there's more questions. I'm not going to go through all of them now, but know your personality type, know how you learn. This one will give you a lot because this, for example, will tell you if you should be a social person in terms of you should be the front man in a business. If you're an I, then you should oftentimes be the person who's behind the scenes, like Charlie Munger is behind the scenes business partner. The N, if you're intuitive or sensing, the thinking or judging. the perceiving or ENT, well, I forget I'm not an actual expert on this one. There's 16 personality types, but take every personality type that is on the planet. So I've got a personality type that I developed, that PASE one. You can take the Myers-Briggs. There's that one where you're choleric, sanguine, melancholic. I forget all the different ones, but just go online, take every career test. It's all free. There's no more excuse. Build, like the saying goes, make war with a multitude of counselors. That means take every test. Go to a psychologist. Ask your mom. Ask your dad. Remember what Nietzsche said. The mind's an impenetrable fortress. You only penetrate it with friends and enemies. Ask your enemies, people who don't like you. Hey, I know you don't like me, but what do you think I'm good at? You must know what you're good at. And that I'm going to actually say here. What do you have aptitude for? So people are all concerned about what you should do for a living, like what you love. That's all BS. I love basketball. Doesn't mean I can be a pro basketball player. That's unrelated. You have to have aptitude, meaning out of 7 billion people, what can you be in the top 1 or 2% in? You got to have all these, and you have to know that about yourself. So that's the first step. And I want you to just take some practical steps. Take these tests more than once. Lots of them. You're going to spend the next 50 years of your life, or more or less, depending on how old you are, working. You might as well work on the right thing. It's a criminal act to work on the wrong thing. So the next thing I said, after you know yourself, okay, then how do you know the industry? So I talk about this a little bit. You might have heard me talk about this. You want to pick the broad industry. So for me, I'm really in education. Now I'm focused on that. Maybe secondarily, I would say education through media. That's my industry, okay? And I want to stick with that. You want to stick with that for a long time. David Ogilvy said a person only has a chance to have one industry that they perfect and become an expert in their whole life. Maybe two if you're lucky. Bill Gates became a humanitarian after 50. He spent from 12 to 50 just knowing software. And Zuckerberg, software. Jeff Bezos, e-commerce. That was his one industry, right? So that's mine, but you have to figure out yours. And the beauty is you can change products. We'll talk about that. But you don't change this. This is your bread and butter. This is what you will dominate in. So how do you know what you should do here? Imagine there's 5 circles. We're going to look where these all kind of intersect. All right? That's what I call it. It's like a Venn diagram or Eulerian diagram. So what should these 5 be? So the first one, you want to ask yourself, okay, here's the 5 things. I'll list them out. Number 1, what have you been doing the last 10 years? So don't ignore what you already have some momentum in. If you're super young, you could ignore this. But if you're 40, you may want to at least factor this in. It doesn't mean you have to do it. Just factor it in. Number 2, you have to, what did you grow up around? The way the human brain works, like Dr. Helen Fisher says, your brain has mental maps. So you'll be subconsciously, things will be easier for you if you grew up around them. Parents, grandparents, uncles, friends, something like that. The third thing, I don't know why I said heart, grew up around. Okay, the next thing is, what do friends and enemies compliment you on your whole life? For me, you know, if you look at what I built businesses around, that probably you know me, it's like reading books, right? Well, I've been reading. I grew up, I started reading when I was very young, been doing it for more than 10 years. I grew up around my parents, my grandparents who kind of raised me were professors. They had books all around them. Even my friends would say I could read well, but my enemies, even people who hate me, would be like, I hate Ty, but you know, he is good at reading. That's a good way. It's American Idol syndrome where you think you're a good singer because your mom thinks you're good. No, you're only a good singer if people who hate you still would admit you have a good voice. That's where you find natural aptitude. Then what did you want to do at 14 years old? This is a great question that Alan Nation introduced me to, because at 14 years old, you didn't have that much fear, right? Because you were probably with your parents. You're at the lowest level of fear, and also your IQ according to some studies, peaks when you're 14. You're actually smarter. One of the 25 cognitive biases is senescence. The older you get, the dumber you get. One of my friends working on a biotech company trying to find the cure for aging, and he says the problem is the brain you build up, it's kind of like plaque you get in your teeth, you get it in your brain. So your brain gets cloudy every day that you live, maybe past, this early age in life. And then the last one is the one everybody always focuses on. It's like, what do you talk about when you're out with your friends on a Saturday night, when you're not working? Like, what are you naturally curious about? So these are 5 questions, and what you're looking for is some commonality that points to one of these industries. Now, once in a while, I run into people that say, I still can't figure it out. You got to spend a little time. And we're in this program 18 months. You're in the beginning here. Think of it in quarters, like 3 months at a time, 6 quarters. You're going to go through here with me. Take the whole first quarter to think about this. Bounce it off smart people who have known you for a long time. Take a lot of tests. Do whatever it takes. It's like gold mining. People came to California. I'm here in Hollywood. People moved here. There's an interesting book called is it Alaska, or one of these books by James Michener, who won a Pulitzer Prize, one of the best historical fiction writers. And when you read the story of like people coming from Klondike, I think is the book. It's about these people that came from Ireland. They took a boat across. This is in the 1800s. Landed on one side of Canada, had to take like river boats, and half the people got killed by Native American the Canadian Indians, and half the people drowned in the river and took the wrong way and went through the icy cold waters and starved to death and froze to death and got eaten by wolves. And a few people made it to this part of Alaska where they had a remote chance of finding gold, and they spent years there trying to find gold, and only 1 out of 1,000 of them actually found gold and became a rich person. Most people just made enough money to drink themselves till they died. So that's like a horrible amount of energy, lifetime, that people went into finding one piece of gold. If you consider your life important, then I hope you'll see this. Finding this is gold, and all of us, myself and you, modern world has made us weak. If I ask people to take 3 months to find the most important thing, if they don't find it in 3 hours, they freak out. You can't be like this. This is a program for people who are going to toughen up. So you have to toughen up and go, even if it takes me the whole 18 months to figure it out, this is the ultimate gold mine. Thomas Carlyle said, "Blessed is the man who found his work." If you know your and woman, if you find your true career, you have everything. You're going to spend the most of your life not with family, not with food or exercise or even sleep. Do the math. Most of your time is going to be spent in your career. So if I told you you got 4 rooms in your house, you're going to spend 1 hour in one room, another 4 hours in another room, 3 hours in another one, and then you're going to spend 16 hours in the 4th room. Which one do you want to decorate? Which one do you want to paint? Which one do you want to perfect? You want to perfect the room that you're in the most. That is the room of career. So don't give up on this. Now, once you get this industry thing right, and again, what are the industries? You've got things like, finance is an industry. You have education. You have construction is an industry. Just go to the U.S. Department of Labor industry statistics. You've got finance, you've got hospitality, you've got the food business, agriculture, mining, all these. Pick one of those, okay, that matches them up most closely with all 5. You might not have all 5. You might not have grown up. You might be an orphan or something. You didn't grow up around any parents, but you still grew up around something. But it's okay if some of these point less than others, okay? The older you are, the more you got to factor in what you've already been doing. This one is one of the most important. I think the 14-year-old one and this what strangers compliment you on are the most important to focus on. Okay, and what you talk about, what you have a lot of curiosity is important. So once you figure that out and you identify an industry, now the fun part begins where you try to go, notice that these are fixed. They're not opportunistic. This one is kind of fixed. Your personality is pretty much fixed. You were probably born an extrovert or an introvert. You were probably born an ENTP. You don't change that much. I've talked to some scientists who do the personality type. People can change a little. Extreme trauma can change you, but in general, you are what you are. So that's fixed. The last 5 questions we asked, those destiny things, those are kind of fixed. The industry you should be in, like that's kind of fixed, right? Like I wasn't born to be a pro American football player. You got to be a kind of big chubby dude to do that, right? That's not in the cards for me. So I just cross it off and move on. That's fixed. Now the next thing, which people love, where they feel free, the product though isn't fixed. You can move around. Think of the best example is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was an opportunist. Back in the 70s, he saw people wanted personal computers. He was interested in technology and design before he figured out what he was going to do. Then he was like, if you see that movie Jobs with what's his name, the actor, I'll remember in a second, but Ashton Kutcher, thank you. It's got a good, he realized he liked design. He was artistic, creative. That was his destiny, his industry. Then he then picked the product was making that computer where he got the parts, he got the money, a loan from a guy, bought a whole bunch of computer parts. So from there, he then launched this Mac or whatever, I forget, Apple computer. Then over time that evolved into other products as the market dictated. He was movable, he was like opportunistic. Ooh, I think I can make money with the iPod. Oh, I think I make money with iPhone. Then the iPhone came, oh, I can make money with the iPad. Then he's like, I can make more money going back to iPhone, but making them bigger, iPhone 6. And so they're continually rolling out different products one at a time with focus. But you notice, Apple hasn't changed industries. Apple is not building real estate projects. Apple is not in the restaurant business. Apple's pretty much in the design technology business. So they've stuck to exactly what I'm talking about. If you go straight to the top, like I talk about, they're really the biggest, I think by market cap, the most valuable company in the world because they stuck with the vision of Steve Jobs, who knew himself. He did not try to be what he wasn't. He was kind of a mad scientist designer. That's what he stuck with. You have to be the same way. Follow that model. Over and over, you see the same thing. Even outside of business, like Mahatma Gandhi, he was very like empathetic person. He became a lawyer. He went and fought for the rights of South Africans that were being discriminated against. He went back to India. He always stayed on that track of like humanitarian, an activist. The products change. At one point he was in South Africa. At another point he was in India, but the industry didn't change. And that's how he built skill. And that, at the end of the day, is the truest form of an investor entrepreneur. And remember, the goal of this program is you come out, it's not about me, it's about you being an investor entrepreneur. The investor is putting time in, putting $1 in today to get $2 tomorrow. An entrepreneur is a creative person reinventing the world in your image. You must do it. But that's why you have to know yourself, because a lot of people don't know themselves, so they don't know how to recreate the world in their image. Know yourself, know your values, know how you learn, know whether you're extroverted or introverted, how you learn, notes, books, audio, seminars, doing, kinesthetic, all those things. Then narrow that down with those 5 questions into the industry, and finally, you'll get to the fun part of products. And even that's not the fun part. Then the money will begin to flow. This is the directional path that we're still here kind of in the philosophy before we get into the technical details of how you build a business. So the questions for you are, number 1, I want you right now here on the page to put your best guess as a definition of who you are. Just an all-encompassing one, according to the things. If you know your personality type, put it right in. ENTP, blah, 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 whatever personality type. If you know the PACE system, if you heard me talk about that, or your PASE, just write about yourself. Just take a little bit of time here, a couple minutes, write about yourself. How do you learn? What do you value? Are you materialistic? Are you social? Are you an emotional person? Do you value, close-knit your family, or do you want a big picture world? Are you corporate, formal, or do you like to be on the beach and be in sandals and go surfing to do business? Do you want to be the front man in front of the camera and doing the PR, or are you better off behind the scenes? That's the first question. Second question then, Define your industry. Put the answers to those 5 questions right here. There's room, right in the comment section. Because if you can't find the answer, other people, remember, you're part of a group now, community of other people going through this program that can help you. Then thirdly, what is the product that you're going to start with? Just a hypothesis now. It might change over the next 18 months. So answer those 3 questions. And lastly, the 4th question is important. Give an example of how not following what we talked about today has maybe led you astray, caused you to lose money, or caused you to waste some years, and how you're going to resolution to make that change. Okay? So very important here. Know yourself, know your industry, know your product. Then the rewards of being an investor entrepreneur will eventually, like Munger says, step by step you get ahead, not necessarily in fast spurts, but you prepare for the fast spurts by the discipline to do this stuff. This is the stuff nobody will do. Everybody wants to jump into it. Everybody, 99% of the world is weak. They're weak-minded, they're weak-willed. Some of it's their own fault, and some of it's just the society that's, infected me and you. Or you and I. Is that the proper? No, I said it right. You and me. So I want you to step apart from the crowd. Like Nietzsche said, every amazing person, and I'm paraphrasing, he didn't say exactly like that, but they want to rise above the crowd. You got to rise above the crowd. 80% of people who start a business fail in 1, 2, 3 years. 80%. Don't be another statistic. Don't waste time or money. Life is short. Go right to it. Step by step. This is the spring and the winter in the season. In the winter, you plan. That's what we're doing now. In the spring, you start to plant seeds. The fall will come where you'll get to eat the apples and reward of what you have. You can get those things that you want. But all right, I will see you on the next lesson.